Hey, this is the pile. Necropolis. Now this is when things get a little crazy. Even more crazy than they have been going already. Today's Pokemon card? Ooh, Lava Star. Cool. I have this other Shrek glass. I believe I showed you the one... You know what, let me grab both of them for you. Okay, hello! Welcome to the review for Necropolis by Anthony Horowitz, the fourth book in the Power of 5 series. This is a slightly larger book, but nowhere near as big as the fifth book. I'll start with a non-spoiler discussion. I will signify when we get into spoiler territory, and I'll do a conclusion and score at the end. So, Necropolis. Pretty ominous name. I remember when I was reading through the series, I assumed that this was the final book. But it wasn't. I suppose it makes sense that there were 5 entries in the series. This book actually, I feel like it parallels, not quite. I get more of a vibe from the first book, Ravensgate. In Ravensgate, we were introduced to Matthew, the main protagonist, and then in Evil Star, he got a companion, another one of the 5, Pedro, and then in Nightrise, we're introduced to 2 other gatekeepers, the twins, Scott and Jamie, and they were kind of separate. That was kind of a separate story. So, and this one sort of begins in the same way, where we're introduced to Scarlet, who is the 5th and the only girl gatekeeper. She lives in London, which, curiously, she lives right down the street from where Matthew lived, and they just never knew. And they find this out in this book, and they're like, we've lived down the street our whole lives, and we never knew. It focuses on Scarlet, and Scarlet, although she does have sort of a feistiness, she is more of a typical schoolgirl, and probably definitely had the best upbringing out of all of the gatekeepers. Her parents did get divorced, and then at some point they move away, and they move away abroad, and she decides she wants to stay in London and keep going to her school. And because they're quite wealthy, they have a caretaker who looks after them, and so they live sort of an independent life. But aside from that, they're pretty average secondary school student, which is nice instead of being a street urchin or a delinquent that had a traumatic past or 2 abused American twins. And who had to live in California. But she does have to live in London, so there we go. Equals pequals. Yeah, so she's having a pretty decent time, I would say, until she accidentally slips through one of the doors, and then she gets involved in the whole gatekeeper stuff and the whole ancient evil thing going on there. She goes through the door, and the doors all lead to, like, places of religious importance, and she's in a Ukrainian mountain temple that got overtaken by religious men who turned to the old ones. They lock her up in a cell, and it's a pretty dire situation. And it's really good writing, and with a typical teenage protagonist that their parents aren't present, and they get taken care of after their caretaker in London. It's basically Matthew. It's basically the same setup as Alex Rider. This is very familiar territory for Anthony Horowitz. He's very comfortable, and he writes very well. And he's also very comfortable to bring us pretty nicely into uncomfortable places. So, there's some good writing, a really good start, and focusing on Scarlet and giving her a lot in this book really fleshes out her character, which is good, and I'm very glad, especially as she's the only girl out of the 5, the 4 other boys. And so it's nice for her to have more of a spotlight and not to be relegated in the background. If anyone's really relegated into the background, it's Scott and not Scarlet. And that kind of makes sense. I feel like that's a good balance of things. Just because Scott's one of the twins, and him being left out leads to other things, which is important. And I'm glad that we get to spend some time with Scarlet. But this book is not just about Scarlet, it's also about Matthew and Pedro pursuing and trying to catch up with Scarlet while the old ones are always one step ahead. It's just so good how Anthony Horowitz writes situations that seem so dire, where there's no room to get out. So Scarlet's in this cell, it's freezing cold, she's going to be there for like a week. They're barely feeding her anything, and so she's not strong enough, she's weak, you know. and she's under harsh lock and key and everything like that. She's given no options. It's not like they dangle around the keys or they left a hole in the wall or there's a big window or anything like that. But they do make a small little mistake, and she capitalizes on it, and she does manage to escape. And this exemplifies so many parts of this whole series and his books, Anthony Horowitz's books in general, how he manages to write situations that seem so dire that there are barely any options, and then he manages to give a small valid options, and the character manages to figure it out, and they explore that avenue, and by the skin of their teeth they manage to do or accomplish something. It's never overwhelming success, or if it is success, they quickly hit another wall or have to face another issue. And that's what I really like about this. It's intense, and I just feel like this jail cell thing exemplifies that, how the harshness, and then the clever and the wit, and what the characters have to do. They take the small little inch and they try and go as far as they can with that, but they can never go the full mile, just because the forces against them are so oppressive. Hello! So what's going on with the other people? Hello! What's going on with the other people in this book, huh? Well, Matt and everyone else has been in Nazca, and oddly, they've not really been doing anything. They've been kind of lazing around, just kind of hanging out and getting to know each other. Pedro and Matt are finding difficulty to connect with Scott, probably because of the awful things that happened to him in the last book, and how Nightrise tried to indoctrinate him and torture him into joining the Old Ones. But they did not fully complete that, and they got him back, and although they are spending time with him, they're finding it difficult to connect with him, which is really sad. It can be a little frustrating how, like, the Old Ones are back, they're doing stuff, they're moving in the world, they're getting stronger, and these kids are just kind of lazing around, just playing ping pong and watching TV in the desert for like a month. What are they doing? But keep in mind that it is good for them to build a relationship with each other, and also they were quite injured, and they've been through a lot, and so laying low and resting, I guess, is a good thing. And one thing that they say is, what can we even do? We have no idea what to do right now. So we're just, like, we don't know what to do. We're just watching the news, trying to figure things out, speaking with each other, trying out our powers. And one thing that's happened is Matthew's powers, at least Matthew's, I think maybe Pedro also, but their powers have seemed to be getting stronger also, which is a good thing. I assume it's because they're trying to connect with each other more. And that there's 4 out of 5 of them now, which means they only have to find Scarlet. So they go, something happens, I'm not going to talk about that now, and then non-spoiler, I'm not going to talk about what instigates this, but basically they find out that Scarlet is in London. And so they decide, hey, we got to get to London. But it's difficult because the Old Ones are here, Nightrise is everywhere. We have to be very careful with how we go about this. We can't be too obvious. Matthew decides that they need to split up. If there's a trap, they don't want to get all 4 of them captured. And so Matthew says, hey, Scott, I think you and Pedro should stay with the Incas, stay in Peru, while me and Jamie go to London to try and get to Scarlet. Now, this is an interesting choice, and this does cause a lot of division, because firstly, he's splitting up the 2 twins. Secondly, he's leaving Scott behind. And Scott gets quite upset at this, saying, oh, you don't trust me just because I spent time with that. I went through something awful and now you're treating me bad. And Matthew denies it, and I think this is showing, although he is, for some reason, the default leader, he doesn't really know why himself, but he is kind of picking it up naturally. And nobody's contesting him. Nobody else is taking charge. And so he's just doing it, and everybody's kind of listening to him. He doesn't feel like it's something he really wants to do, but it seems like he's the match and he's the leader, and that's just how it is. He didn't ask for it to be this way. And he's made this decision, but it also does show his maybe immaturity and inexperience, because he does not trust Scott, but he's refusing to say it. He's not elaborating. He's just refuting it and saying, oh, no, it's for another reason. So he kind of avoids and dodges the question, which isn't very comforting. But basically, Pedro is a healer. If they split up and then he pairs Pedro with Scott, Pedro can keep working on Scott and maybe undo some of the mental damage and the trauma that he's experienced. although Pedro is saying that it's really difficult to reach Scott and he doesn't know how much he can do for him, which is sad because it brings up this concept of can people be broken so bad that they can't recover from it? If we have severe trauma, does that stick with us for the rest of our lives? Can we move past it? And even if we do move past it, does that mean it's gone, or does that mean we still carry it and it can still inhibit us in important occasions? Which it does for Scott. Scott freezes up to protect Jamie when usually he's always on that. But it is also a really intense situation, and these are young kids. They're teenagers. I think they've gotten a bit older now because there was a few months time skip or whatever. Matthew is 15 now, when before he was 14. That makes more sense. Yeah. So I think they're all 15 at this point, I think. Their birthdays, pretty much the same. Anyway, so that's a lot of speaking about the group dynamic that's happening. And essentially, Jamie and Matt try and chase Scarlet around, but Nightrise and the Old Ones always seem to be a step ahead of them. Scarlet ends up going to Hong Kong, where the Old Ones are hiding out. The title of the book comes in there. This is going into spoiler territory now, I would say. That means City of the Dead, or City of Death. Let's just say maybe about Hong Kong, you know? Something bad's gonna happen. Welcome to the spoiler territory discussion. Because we're quite far in the series and we're going to be dealing with some big themes, I'm just going to immediately put a moderate spoiler discussion, and let's just get into it. Scarlet's father works for Nightrise. He's not necessarily evil, he just works at this company. Nightrise has a lot of business outlets. The influence of the Old Ones in Nightrise supposedly is just increasing, and so he didn't know the evil doings of this corporation. He was just an office man, but who just did regular, corporative, morally questionable things. Not like totally ancient evil influence, morally questionable things. You know what I'm saying. Basically, her father gets seduced by the promises of Nightrise Corporation, is willing to lie to her, sends her a letter saying, oh, you need to come to Hong Kong right now, you need to come. And Scarlet has a friend, Aiden, boyfriend or close platonic friend, something like that, and they have an incident where Nexus tries to reach out to Scarlet and meet her in a cafe, and a bomb goes off right where they're supposed to be meeting. So basically the Nexus is trying to reach out to them. Matt and Jamie are on the way, but the Nightrise Corporation sweeps them up and makes her leave school and go to Hong Kong. And when she arrives, her father's not there, and she has these people from the Nightrise Corporation babysitting her. This is so intense, because the people babysitting her...
Remember when moderate spoilers said?
They're like shapeshifters or something like that, so they're like inhuman creatures of the Old Ones. They are just following her, and it's so interesting because Hong Kong is a little bit difficult to talk about, because basically they're making it seem like this crazy evil place, not because it is evil or anything to do with their political and social situation. What's that square called again? Anyway, that's not about this. The Old Ones have chosen this city. It is clear that the weird and evil and inhuman stuff going on there is because of the Old Ones. So that's an important distinction to make, I believe. Anthony Horowitz isn't painting the actual people of Hong Kong in a droney light, but maybe he is, maybe he chose that location for his own reasons to explain some of the pressures going there and building up on that in this fantasy world where these evil ancient beings start to influence and just magnify humanity's darker points or humanity's dehumanization of each other. And the Old Ones really latch onto that and drag it out and make it worse and worse. Here it is. Hong Kong is being replaced by the shapeshifters of the Old Ones. People are being killed. The police, brutal, are murdering, going into people's house and killing them. Even the triads are being wiped out and destroyed, and everybody's acting drone-like. People are being replaced and just, pretending, and I'm trying to put on this facade so that people don't catch on. But a lot of people are fleeing Hong Kong. A lot of people are leaving the country, and they won't say why. But people Even people who know nothing about the old ones, I just have this weird feeling that Hong Kong is changing and not for the good better. There's pollution that's rolling in. People are wearing masks all the time. In Scarlet's stay there, the pollution gets worse and worse, and it makes her feel dizzy. People are trying to get a message to her, and it's another one of those things where everything is so subtle. She's being looked upon every single second of the day, and she has to try and communicate with them and try and not make it seem like she's going out of the way to go do something. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's so intense and it's so well written, and it's just like a puzzle, a little thing where she has to escape but not give in, that she's realized something's wrong. She has to kind of play dumb the whole time, but then also it's just such an intense situation, and there's such a slim margin for error, and it's just so intense, and it's so cool. This is a good book. This is a good book. And the only thing is, I can't really talk about the plot. If I just keep talking about the plot, I'm just going to be explaining it more. It's going to make this video longer, but I think I've talked about it enough. But the old ones are carving Hong Kong from the inside out, and they're just slowly killing it, and killing it, and killing it, until it's just a shell. And they're doing it as slowly as they can, so people don't realize, and the world doesn't realize. They're trying to blend in. At the end of this book, they start to not be in the shadows as much. Basically are making a city of the dead, destroying it, and harvesting people to make their army stronger. The ending sequence is amazing, because we find out what Scarlet's power is, which is to control the weather. I don't even know how to review this book. I'm just talking. It's just such a climatic ending. Okay, major serious spoiler warning now. It's a great book. Skip to the conclusion, basically. I have to say some things. The city is dying. Matt and Jamie find out about the triads, and Scarlet is also seems to be in a similar way that Pedro is connected to the one of the gods of the Incas. Scarlet is also connected to one of the Polynesian gods, or I can't quite remember what it is. Basically, that area, Taiwan, and all the islands, the archipelago, East Asia, or the West Pacific, I suppose. And we find out she can control the weather, basically. As Jamie and Matthew are coming into the city, all hell breaks loose, and when they arrive there, there's people dying on the street. The old ones have poisoned, putting stronger and stronger poison in the pollution fumes that are coming in from China. That's why Hong Kong can't do anything about it, because the pollution fumes are coming in from China, so they just have to deal with it. The old ones have been poisoning them, and I know this kind of comes into... This is sounding a lot of conspiracy theory, but it's playing off of that sort of stuff. And it's taking the truths of pollution and global warming and corrupt corporations and dehumanization of the workforce, slavery, and inequality, food instability, all these things, and social pressure and conformity, the lacking or lacklusterness of a lot of our governments across the world, political instability, and it capitalizes on that and exaggerates that to the degree that we worry, to a dark future that we're worrying about, and it attributes it not just to humanity, but as humanity being magnified by this evil that needs to be defeated by the good of humanity, which are children, which are the next generation working together. It doesn't matter how powerful the gatekeepers are, because they have to work together to be strong enough. That's why they're looking for Scarlet, because there's only 4 of them, and although their powers are much stronger now, they need 5. And that's what makes this so intense, because they're chasing after Scarlet, and every single time they get close, the old ones manage to do something to take her away from them. And it's so intense. I suppose the only thing that I didn't like about reading this is sometimes it was so frustrating. They were so close. We worked so hard. We went through so many chapters to try and get this plan to work, and it failed. So many times does that happen, and it's frustrating. But it's because I'm invested. It's because everything is so intense. Scarlet's power has been building up throughout the book, and we get this cool ending sequence where these signals are coming in that are supposed to be like warning for this typhoon. As other gatekeepers arrive in Hong Kong, and the old ones aren't hiding as much, and people are dying on the street, and there's like police cars everywhere. At the same time, Hong Kong is collapsing, and Scarlet has subconsciously called in this typhoon that's literally ripping buildings from the ground, just destroying everything. It's destroying the Nightrise Corporation headquarters, the chairman. Oh, he has a fortune. He's like, oh, do you want to go to the other side of Hong Kong? Because he's talking to Scarlet, because he's a little weirdo. And Scarlet's like, oh, are you coming with us? And he's like, oh, no, I'd never go there. Apparently the ferry ride is good, but I don't go on boats because I had a fortune teller tell me I would be killed by a boat. I'd have an accident involving a boat that would lead to my death. And so I don't go on boats. And the typhoon is so strong that while he's in his penthouse on top of a skyscraper, a boat, I predicted this a few pages before it happened, a boat crashes into his office and impales him, and he dies. That's why you should take that boat ride. Because if you're going to die by a boat, it might happen in other ways. This book's crazy, and the ending sequence is so intense. And at the very, very, very end, all 5 of them manage to get together. Scott manages to save Jamie from a bullet, but it hits Scarlet, who is standing behind Jamie. And so Scarlet, this person who we've been introduced and who we've been chasing after this whole time, gets shot at the end of the book. They try and leave through a magic door, but it's in the heat of the moment, and Matthew does not call out like, everybody go to London, everybody go to Peru. And so they go through the door, and because if they don't know where they're going, they'll go someplace random on an individual level. And so this whole book, we're chasing after Scarlet to make the 4 the 5. And at the very end, we have like a couple pages where they're together. And then they all get split apart and scattered across the world again. And the old ones leave Hong Kong because it is I just threw away the book, but it has become a necropolis. And so the ending of the book leaves us in a dire situation, a dire place, and it's intense, and you're like, oh, something's gonna go down in the last book. And the last book is like twice as thick as this, and a lot goes down. I'm just gonna go straight to the rating because I've ranted about this enough. This book is great. This book, I'm telling you right now. This is more of a Ravensgate and less of like an Evil Star. Even though all of it's good. What I'm trying to say is, I think we're in 6 out of 7 territory, not 5. There is some frustration about it. How can we just have like a proper win? Can we have a win, please? But it just kept me reading, kept my attention so much. I really like this book. There's some really good stuff here. There's also a return to a lot of Grizzly bits, and there's some cool plans that work out. And it really brings up the ante with what the old ones are doing and how corrupt and perverse they are. So I'm going to give this a tentative, let's be kind, and give it a strong 6. I really enjoyed this book. I know this is our first strong 6, and I'm basically saying is this the best book so far? Yes it is. I'm giving it a strong 6 for now. I have a feeling that it is on the very lowest rung of the strong 6, but I don't want to get even... Is that a spider? I don't want to get even more particular. I'm doing out of 7 for a reason, and then I also have like solid, strong, weak. I have 21 specific scores I could give, so I don't want to do like it's a light strong 6. So I'm not going to do that. Just because this series has been doing a lot, and this adds on to it, and it ties a lot of the previous books. While Nightrise was kind of its own thing, this really ties into the previous things, introduces a whole new character, fleshes them out, and it's really intense. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode. that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and next episode will finally be the end of the Power 5 series. Me reviewing them, that is. Yeah, so tune in for that. After that, I know this book review series has basically just been the Power of 5 series. After that, I think we're going to be reviewing The Pain Merchants by Janice Hardy. This is her debut book. Obviously, that will be in 2 episodes' time, not in the next episode. But just a heads up, thank you very much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and can I kiss your forehead, please? No? Fair enough. If you said no, you can leave the video now. If you said yes, here you go. Good job, sport. Now, get up there and have some fun. See ya!